I wished I had taken a photo, wished that I had shown what it looked like at that time, but I was too ashamed to tell the story until now because what happened is partially my fault. I wasn't completely proficient back then. I'm a sign language interpreter, and at the time I had just graduated. Maybe if I had been better at my job, I had sold a gig for the animal tracking and wilderness exploration class and thought it sounded like a fun experience for a newbie like me, and I really needed the work, so I accepted the job. I arrived half an hour early. I was pretty nervous back then. Anytime meeting a new deaf person was nerve wracking because what if I couldn't understand them? What if we didn't jive? If they were one of those really fast signers who just had no patience for the beginners, and so I went early, hoping I could glean some context for the job and learned her preferred signs for the vocabulary related to the trails. But it was just rocky from the get go. The moment I stepped out of my beat up Honda and started to introduce myself, she signed, "You're late. You were supposed to be here half an hour ago." "Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe the agency gave me the wrong time." I stammered. My hands were fumbling all of the days to get it wrong. I was already so nervous. He must be Le. The name was Lelani, but at that moment I forgot how to spell it. She quickly corrected me, her fingers so fast I didn't catch them more than the L, but then she gave me her name sign, her hand an L shape, and brushed the tip of her thumb against her cheek in a repeat motion. It was an easy one, thank goodness. Then rolling her eyes, she opened her mouth and spoke aloud in deaf accented English. "Okay, well the interpreter is here now, so I can guess we could get started, everyone." Trying not to hide how relieved I was that she voiced for herself, I fell into step with her students. There were only three, a father, his son, and a middle-aged woman. "Is this all?" I asked her, looking around in surprise. The guide shrugged. "It's so cold this morning, a lot of the people probably decided to stay in their warm beds." Then she spoke aloud to the trio. "The fresh snow is great for seeing tracks." Man and the son were named Damien and Dee. Dee was 9, very excited and claimed to see a deer in the trees every few minutes. Damien was a laid-back parent who made constant dad jokes. It was apparent he mostly brought his son here because of the boy's love for animals. Our last member, Chantal, was a grey-haired woman covered in healing gemstone bracelets who told us she enjoyed foraging for herbs and mushrooms. The freshly fallen snow had formed a crunchy, icy crust on the surface of the world, and it crunched pleasantly under our boots as we set off on the wintry trail. Sun's rays glistened off the surface of the snow like diamonds. Since the guide didn't need me to voice, my job was relaxingly easy. I signed whenever one of the three hearing people interjected a comment or question, or in Damien's case a silly dad joke. 20 minutes passed on the trail, and then we took a pause so that Dee could wander off into the bushes because, predictably, the little boy needed to pee. We waited. Our guide turned keen eyes on me. She was a spry woman with crow's feet and just a hint of grey in her hair. "Nice to be an interpreter, huh?" she signed. "I bet you get to go on all sorts of interesting gigs." "This is definitely the coolest," I replied. I really did mean that. I told her I mostly interpreted college classes teamed with more seasoned interpreters because I was still new. The smirk said, "Yeah, I could tell," but she was gentler now that we were on the trail and remarked, "We're coming out on a frigid Saturday morning." "Saturday? You mean Friday?" "No, Saturday." "Definitely Friday," I said. Checked my calendar and showed her. "Oh dang, I get so mixed up sometimes." She laughed and the tension broke between us. Then she looked worried. "Maybe you were early instead of late. I hope I didn't have more students waiting for me back at the parking lot. Oh God, what if I got the time wrong?" For a second her expression clouded over, but then, like the sun pierced the clouds, she grinned as she noticed something in the bush. "Hey, raspberries." So only thorny snakes poured over into the snow. Our guide chuckled and explained that raspberries are pretty easy to identify. These canes grow tall and then loop down to the grounds like this. Or else that these side branches produce the berries. You can recognize them by the leaves. Always in a trio. She fingered a few remaining dead leaves. "Raspberries, huh?" said Damien, as Dee returned from his pee break to examine the thorny shrub. "Hey Dee, do you know how you could tell a raspberry bush?" "The leaves," he said. echoing our guide. That's her way, but I'll let you in on a way easier secret. Damien bent down and whispered loudly into his son's ear, just look for the red berries, then you know, raspberry bush. We all just chuckled at Damien's usual darkness, while Dee protested loudly that there are no berries in winter. But everyone forgot about the berries when our guide pointed out animal prints up ahead in the snow. Our first tracks, the two overlanders with their hoof prints, marching through the snow across our path and into the trees. Dee immediately wanted to follow, but our guide convinced him that we should stick to the trail. Soon we identified rabbits and squirrel tracks, as well as some bird prints. But then, just as we reached a dip in the trail leading to a narrow stream, our guide frowned at a set of very large prints. They came from the trail beyond and vanished into the stream in front of us, and looked almost like human feet. Almost. But they had longer toes. It was difficult for her to get a clear sense of the prints, she told us, because whatever creature made them was shuffling along through the snow, making the prints blurred and elongated. Ooh, a mystery. Damien nudged Dee. Let's follow them, squealed Dee. Is it safe? It's not a bear, is it? Worried Chantal. No, not a bear. Definitely not. The guide assured us. She eyed the tracks again, frowning. They came down the very trail we had been taking if we crossed the stream, but because the tracks went into the stream, presumably coming out somewhere else, if we followed them, we'll be heading in the direction the animal came from, not the direction it was going, meaning we were unlikely to run into it. Anyway, there weren't any large, dangerous animals in these woods according to our guide. After pondering for a moment, she declared we would finish the trail loop. Once we crested the hill, it would curve across a meadow and take us back to the parking lot. Until was worried they were human tracks from a hiker who went missing the previous year. Guide looked skeptical. As she worked here for years, she questioned Shanta if it wasn't a different pack. She had never heard of someone going missing, except for one hiker who was found a day or two later, but Shanta was sure of it, doubling down as she stated she avoided coming here for months because of it. The guide shrugged, saying how a hiker wouldn't be wandering out here far from here, especially barefoot. Dee was already up ahead of us, forging across the stream, and then dashing through the snow. He shouted, stating that the tracks lead up here. His father shouted behind him, hollering for him not to run so far. We all hurried to catch up. Dee had stopped at the crest of the hill and stood there, holding the bright sun, staring at something. As we all caught up, panting and out of breath, we looked to see what had captivated his attention. Here at the hill's crest, the trail forked. In one direction, it descended across a wide field, slowly looping back towards the woods and stream and presumably the parking lot where we started. But in the other direction, the tracks followed the trail, through dense trees and into a cleft in a rocky hill face, vanishing into darkness. Chantal questioned which way do we go, turning to look along the sunnier trail, but the boy was persistent, pointing at the tracks and the cave, saying, "Please, let's follow the tracks, please. Can't we see what's there?" Father was more hesitant, asking if he was sure he wants to go into a spooky dark cave. The tour guide meanwhile pursed her lips. She caught my eyes and signed. They could be human tracks. If they are, they're barefoot, and the way they're dragging their feet in the snow, they need help. If there's any camping material in that cave, maybe it's someone who got stuck out here. But stopping short, her eyes narrowed on the cliff wall. She motioned me to join her, and we followed the footprints to the trees. As we approached the split in the rock face, the guide paused and signed to me. I'm going to see what's in there. The thing is, I've hiked these trails for years, and I don't remember there being a fork like this. It's strange. This shouldn't be here. I need to check and see what's going on. Stay with the group. I'll let you know if it's safe. And just ends up being an empty cave or something. Are you sure you don't want me to take me off? She signed me to stay. Then she turned around and called aloud to the other tree. Stay here. I'm going to go check and make sure it's safe. The wait for our guide's return seemed forever. We had left the sun behind and stood in the shade of that rocky cliff. The temperature felt as if it had plummeted 20 degrees, and not just a chill on my skin, but the cold seemed to have injected into my very veins. an ice pick of terror that increased with every passing moment. My heart rate escalated. Suddenly, I thought maybe I understood what people meant when they talked about negative energy. The path was wrong. It shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be here. And the tracks, something human or not quite human. What did that even mean? The wait for our guide seemed an eternity. Finally, the crunching of snow and a feeling of relief whooshed out of me in a sigh as the guide appeared at the mouth of the opening and called out it's safe for everyone to come on. The little boy bolted ahead and the rest of us followed. The guide again saying the same phrase, it's safe for everyone to come on. But her hands were moving. The others probably thought she was signing let's go. Looking back, I wish I had more experience, wish I trusted my eyes more, because maybe then I would have shouted a warning. If I had been a more experienced interpreter, could I have stopped what happened? I don't know. I was still trying to make it all out, confused because my ears and eyes contradicted each other. Her voice said the same exact phrase, but the pointer finger of her right hand slid between the splayed fingers of her left and jerked outwards, a motion that looked as if her pointer finger was escaping. Run, run, run. Don't follow her, I shouted. Too late, Dia and Chantal had already gone in. Damien was slower and cast one look back at me before plunging into the darkness after his son. Now there was only me. The guide looked at me, her face contorted, lips pulling back over teeth and gums. For a moment she looked like a long ago rotted corpse. The flesh withered away, then I blinked and she was smiling, an ordinary smile. Her hands lifted, spasmed, and shook. And then instead of telling me to escape, her hands gestured stiffly like one of those marionettes. Come. Now her voice and gestures matched it all. Come on. I fled. Reaching the parking lot, I was stunned to find a group mingling in the snow. A young deaf woman with long black hair stood at the front of the group, signing angrily at her phone screen. I waved at her and shouted, "Hey, are you from the wilderness group? I need help." She wailed to my face, oh finally, demanding to know why I was late. Her hands flew fast, so fast. Flustered, I interpreted, trying to explain to her about our guide. She asked me what the hell I was talking about. She stated that she was Lilani. So, who had I been interpreting for? It turns out the name signs I showed her, the L my hand brushed against my cheek, belonged to a woman named Laurelie, who had previously been the trail guide and had mentored the late hired Lilani. She explained that Laurelie has been missing since last year. She disappeared when she was taking a group out on the trail. She went to check some strange tracks and never came back. Last year had the trek going on a Saturday, 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. My blood froze. Suddenly all the misunderstood details made sense. Lilani, the real Lilani, insisted I led her to the fork in the trail where her mentor had vanished into the cave. We followed the crisp, clear prints in the snow all the way to the stream and up the crest of the hill. There was no longer any fork. In fact, no one's footprints but mine emerged from the other side of the stream. It appeared as if I had gone up the slope, turned myself around in a circle a few times up there, and then run along the path looping back to the parking lot. But as we got back to the parking lot, I noticed something in the crisp snow. The impressions our boots had made were clear. They were mine, Damien's, Dee's, and Chantal's big boots, little boots, all with different treads. But as for Laurelie's, I couldn't find any boots matching the ones I had seen her wearing. The final set of prints among our group from the parking lot, shuffling in the place where Laurelie had stood, were barefoot with elongated toes.